Hello, hello, welcome everybody. How are you this evening? As you arrive here at Catskill Park Day, welcome. If you can head over to the chat and just drop into the chat your name and where you're from. Let our panelists know who is here. So welcome everybody to Catskill Park Day. Thank you so much for stopping by, and head on over to the chat. Welcome, Sherry Book from Maryland. Nice, we've got Delhi here. Wonderful. Mo, welcome. Andy, good to see you. Judy from Roscoe, hello. Welcome, Nadia. Wow, great. Socrates. Manor Inc. is here. Thanks so much for coming out, Manor Inc. We've got folks from Stone Ridge. We've got Hoboken in the room. Welcome. So folks, as you're signing in, welcome to Catskill Park Day webinar. Please drop a note to say hi to our panelists over there in the chat. Just let us know who you are and where you're from. We're going to get started here in just a minute once we give folks time to log in and log on. If you're new to Zoom or to the webinar, you can see and hear all of us, but don't worry, we can't see or hear all of you. So we're going to be recording this evening, but we won't be recording you. And as we go through, we're going to leave the chat open here for just a little bit so folks can log in and say hi. And then I'll turn off the chat and I'm going to ask you to submit questions to the panelists using the Zoom's Q&A feature. So if you're on your computer, just hover your mouse over the bottom of the Zoom window and you'll see a little Q&A bubble pop up. You can jot your question in there. If you're on your phone, just tap the screen and you'll see the Q&A feature pop up there. Welcome, welcome. Welcome from High Falls. This is great. We've got a great turnout. Will the recording link be emailed? Yes, I will send the link out in a follow-up email tomorrow. Welcome, everybody. Catskill Mountain Cub and Friends of Bramley Mountain Fire Tower. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. We're just getting started here on our Catskill Park Day webinar. And we're going to just give it a couple minutes for just a couple more folks to get logged in and logged on. Marlon from Urban and Outdoor Survival, hello. Nice, welcome. Hi from Hopes in Parksville. Hi, Hope. Great. All right, it is 6:33. So I'm going to go ahead and close the chat. Welcome and hello to everybody who dropped in, letting us know that you're here. Thank you so much. And from now on, if you've got any questions for any of our fantastic panelists tonight, please be sure to drop them into the Q&A widget. So my name is Katherine. I'm the Deputy Director for Catskill Mountainkeeper, and along with Jeff Senterman, Mountainkeeper helps to co-chair the Catskill Park Coalition. And every year we put on Catskill Park Day to bring people to the Capitol and the Capitol to people and get everybody together advocating and celebrating the park. And this year we're bringing it right to you, right in your living room. So thanks so much for having us in, and we welcomed you all to ours as well. So thank you. I'm joined here tonight by Assemblymember Gunther, Assemblyman Tague, Senator Hinchey, DEC Commissioner Basil Seggos, and Catskill Center's very own Jeff Senterman. And I will just swing it around the horn and ask folks to introduce themselves. And we'll start with the Commissioner, Commissioner Seggos.
Hi, folks. Basil Seggos from DEC. Great to be with you all today. Wish we were in person. Good to see you.
Senator Hinchey. You're muted.
Every time. Hi, everyone. Michelle Hinchey, State Senator for the 46th District, representing parts of Ulster County, Greene County, parts of Albany and Schenectady counties, and all of Montgomery County. Thrilled to be here today. Thanks for joining us.
Assemblywoman, you want to say hello?
Oh, hi, Assemblywoman Aileen Gunther. I represent Orange and Sullivan County. I live in a little place called Forestburg, New York. I'm originally from the Bronx. I've lived here for almost 40 years. And we have been able to keep open space in our family. We have 600 acres that is completely wooded, and all of our generations have been paying for it because we know how important this open space is to all of us. So I'm really glad to be here, and I want to thank you for all you do.
Wonderful. Thank you. Assemblyman Tague.
Well, good evening to everyone. Assemblyman Chris Tague. I represent the 102nd Assembly District, 7 counties, all of Schoharie, all of Greene, parts of Ulster, Albany, Columbia, Delaware, and Otsego. And it's just an honor to be here this evening. And I've got a great working relationship with my friend Jeff Senterman and our Commissioner Basil Seggos. Looking forward to the discussion tonight and doing everything we can to make our Catskill Park the best it can be.
Great. And Jeff.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Senterman. I'm the Executive Director of the Catskill Center and also the co-chair of the Catskill Park Coalition. And, you know, it is both sad to me that we can't be in Albany, but it's pretty awesome to me that we are able to get out and see this many people and know that you all care about the Catskill Park as much as we do. And we look forward to talking more about the park and working with all of you to ensure the park is as great as it can be now and into the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So for everybody who's joining us, the hundreds of you who have joined us this evening, thank you. Just to give you a sense of how we're going to do things tonight, we're going to let all of our panelists just have some time to talk to you about what's happening in the Catskills. What are some of the biggest priorities for 2021, and what are some of the challenges that the park is facing? And then we'll ask some questions and take some questions from the crowd as well. So as you're listening, the question pops to mind, please use the Zoom widget, drop it in there, and we will work to get it answered. I don't think we'll get all the questions answered because I already see a whole bunch coming in. Thank you, but we'll work to get to as many as we can. So going back around in the same order, Commissioner, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges and opportunities for the park in 2021?
Well, Catherine, again, it's great to be with all of you, and I do wish this was in person. I know that usually this time of year we see Jeff and cohort banging on doors, lobbying for funds, and it's unfortunate to see it now all separate like this. But you know, I think that the Catskills has unquestionably had a renaissance. We've seen enormous interest in the Catskills, not just this year, COVID year, but really over the last 10 years. You know, huge boost in tourism. We're 20% up in tourism since 2017. Since 2011, we're up 70% in trail usage. So all kinds of big questions and opportunities for us. Even last year with the COVID separations that we all had. DEC putting an enormous amount of work. You know, we managed 287,000 acres of land in the Catskills, and even with all those challenges of overuse, we were able to put time and resources into some of those important trailheads that are generating use. Some of the high use areas like Blue Hole and Catskill Falls, investing in tourism infrastructure like the Catskill Center and the Visitor Center on Route 28. All of these things, certainly we will continue in 2021. My hope is that we get to the point in 2021 that we will no longer be socially distant, hopefully before fall, get some of those restrictions lifted, and as many people vaccinated as possible. But getting those projects rolling, getting some of the tourism, the front country tourism infrastructure invested in, begin some of those projects so that, you know, DEC is often the sort of the gatekeeper to a lot of these wild spaces. You arrive at a parking lot, you meet our trailhead, and then you go off in the backcountry. Unlike, you know, state parks, which generally manages an entire landscape and a user and visitor experience. So for us, investing in those front country resources, that's first and foremost, that's our most important role this year, and controlling the flow of visitors to some of these high use areas, making sure people aren't visiting places in an unsafe manner. And we've put tons of money and resources into Catskill Falls, for example. We need to continue that work and make sure people know that there are many other places in Catskills where they can go to recreate. It's not just those, those few spots where, Facebook seems to track, high usage. Catskills is it's a beautiful place. It's where I got my start as an environmental advocate way back. I don't even know how many years ago now. We need to take advantage of this renaissance, and ultimately the state resources catching up to the high level of use.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank you, Commissioner. Sending it right around here, Senator Hinchey, what are some of the things that you're looking at this year?
Hi, thank you. I am just so excited to be here as a part of this esteemed panel as an ex-board member of the Catskill Center. It is an incredible opportunity, and just so exciting for me to be on the other side here, to now work in partnership with all of you to make sure that we can really push forward the Catskills as the incredible place that it is. I'm incredibly fortunate to have grown up here and really spent my entire life here in the heart of the Catskills. And I grew up swimming at the Blue Hole and at Fawn's Leap and in all of these beautiful places that have been rediscovered in this moment by people who, are coming from all over because they've been tracked on Facebook, or people have found it and shared with their friends, because we are so fortunate to live in a place that people want to come to and want to see more of. And, the biggest priority for me is to make sure that we're protecting these places, to make sure that we're protecting them for people to use and to encourage to use, but making sure that we can also keep our land green and the water pure, and that it's safe for people to use. As the commissioner said, the infrastructure piece is critical. Making sure, we've done tours with Jeff and many others to talk about what we can do in the future, and the future being now, to make sure that these places really stay intact, to stay how they are. And so I'm incredibly excited to work together to figure out how we can make sure that these can power each other, that we can keep the funding that they generate in our region, that we can continue to drive the Catskills forward. Just last week, I asked the commissioner how we can make sure that the Catskills have parity with the Adirondacks in all ways, right? Marketing and others, because people are discovering us, they found us, and they know how lucky we are to be here. And that's really exciting for me. The other thing I think we want to focus on too is making sure that we have more forest rangers coming into our areas, to make sure that we keep them safe. People enjoy our areas, but sometimes they may not know exactly how to do it as safely as they should. And so how can we, as a legislative body and as an advocacy organization, work together to make sure we're increasing our forest ranger funding, and we're making sure that more people are there so that more people can come see the Catskill Park, and we can keep it safe. And, I'm just incredibly excited to be here and to see this forward, and to move it forward, because I think we live in such a beautiful space. We have a lot of work to do ahead of us, and I look forward to partnering with you on all of that.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Assemblymember Gunther, what are your thoughts on opportunities and challenges for this year?
Well, I absolutely agree with everything that Michelle said. And also, we know how many tourists come in, over 2.5 million every year. And it means a lot of economic development in our area, about $115 million per year. And especially during COVID, one of the things I've done during COVID is I love to take rides, and I take rides in the mountains and watch all the people, hiking and, going down by our falls, etc. So I know how important it is to not only our community, but also to other folks to come up and enjoy the parks that we have. And I know that the most important thing we can do as leaders and as an assembly person is to make sure that the funding, the EPF funding and the funding from New York State is there for all of you, so you can continue doing the great work that you're doing.
Thanks. Assemblyman Tague. Sir, you need to unmute.
I got Michelle Hinchey.
This is the phrase of our day.
I got the Michelle Hinchey disease.
I'm not alone.
Yeah, you got it. First of all, I just want to thank you, Catherine, and Jeff, and all the people that are on the Catskill Coalition for the hard work that you do. I want to thank my colleagues tonight as well. All are good friends. Some of us are from different parties, but that doesn't mean anything. We still advocate and do whatever we can for the Catskills. And Commissioner, I just want to thank you. You were actually the first meeting. You and Jeff Senterman, believe it or not, I met with Jeff first, and then you, when I first got elected.
Jeff's always first.
I know, almost 4 years ago.
Right.
But you and your office have always been there, always responded. And, you know, we're continuing to work with your folks to do what we can to better the park and to better the environment all across all of our districts. But, you know,
great.
While we've been blessed with the natural wonders of the Catskills, it's mostly because of the hard work of many, many folks that are on this call. Your hard work and dedication of our parks have become renowned attractions. They have because of the work that you've done and the promotion. And while it goes without saying that we are living through very unprecedented and challenging times, we are uniquely positioned in our area to attract tourism to a region in a time when it has been declined nearly everywhere else. In the era of the COVID-19 pandemics, hiking through the beautiful trails of the Catskills is as safe and as breathtaking as the fresh air. And I wanted to hit on some of the areas that concern me the most. And I'm going to talk mostly about Catskill Falls. You know, DEC invested over $5 million in Catskill Falls. I'm going to say about 5 or 6 years ago. And I brought this concern up to the commissioner, and I know he knows, and it's something I think that we all have to be concerned about, is making sure that there's money in the commissioner's budget to maintain infrastructure and safety things that we've put in place in these parks. My concern is that, yeah, it's great to go and spend $5 million, but if we don't put money in that budget, if any of you've been to Catskill Falls, the beautiful paths that they've made it able for people who are disabled to be able to travel through the area. They put a beautiful parking lot in, but those things come with maintenance issues. You know, so I'm hoping that the governor will listen. The other people in both houses, our colleagues, will listen and make sure that these areas are well funded. You know, there was a report that over 12 million people had flocked to either the Adirondack or the Catskill Park during COVID-19. That's incredible. You know, some of the other areas I think that we need to look at is safety. Catskill Falls, Route 23, traveling to or from Palinville or to and from Haines Falls or Hunter, there is a serious public safety issue on Route 23.
That road.
And we have tried several times. And let me tell you this, the local government and the local people have skin in the game and have helped sit down with ideas. And I know, Commissioner, you and I have discussed this in the past. We need a little more buy-in from DOT. But one of the things that I think would be beneficial is a pathway on both sides of 23, a safe pathway where people can walk the falls, but don't have to go up on Route 23. I would be breaking the law driving down 23 and using my phone to video the near accidents that occur. So I wasn't able to do it, but I think everybody on this Zoom call has witnessed a serious public safety issue on Route 23. And it's not just Catskill Falls. we have places within the Catskills in Ulster County, on the backside of Greene County and Ulster County, where the roads are very narrow and impassable to some of these places. You know, I've met with the local governments in Hunter and Haines Falls and Palinville over the last 3.5 years that I've been in office. They have a plan. I think one of my suggestions, and I don't want to take everybody's time up here, but I think these are important issues. We need to get together, DEC, transportation, parks. We need to have a discussion outside of a budget hearing, and we need to come up with a solution. This is the future of the Catskills. This is the future. Not only is this for our environment and for the education of our young people, but this is about economic viability for this area. There is no agriculture. There's not a lot of agriculture left in Greene County or the northern part of Ulster County. This is the economic driver, and we need to look at a shuttle service. There are lots of things in that park, and I have lots more to say, but I know that my time's limited. What I would like to do is challenge my colleagues, Senator Hinchey, Assemblywoman Gunther, and our good friend Congressman Delgado, for the four of us to get together with the commissioner and with Jeff and the other folks that have interest within the Catskill Park. Let's sit down and go through priorities and let's start working at them. So
thank you.
We talk about later where we want to be in 25 years. Let's have a plan now. So, awesome. Katherine, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
There's just no way you can talk about this issue in 5 minutes.
There's so many big issues, and that's why it's great to have everybody on the line so we can get all the different angles and all the different thoughts on this. So I'm going to pass it over to Jeff to kind of talk about some of how the Catskill Park Coalition is thinking about priorities for this year.
Thanks, Catherine. And I just want to thank everybody else on this panel for the energy, the excitement, the interest. If we were having a panel discussion 10 years about the Catskills, we would have been having even though there were many of us that cared about the Catskills, we would be having a very different conversation. And it's thanks to the hard work of everybody here, the hard work of the coalition members. This will be our 8th Catskill Park Day, even though it is a virtual presence versus being in person. I can remember at the very beginning, me speaking with Alan White and with some others saying, like, how do we get the Catskills noticed in Albany? And we said, well, everybody else is a squeaky wheel, so why don't we just become a squeaky wheel? And that is really how the idea of the Catskill Park Coalition was formed. Every year we come together. It's about 35 different organizations that represent organizations that are in the Catskills, that work in the Catskills, or have an interest in the region. We work by consensus, so all of the goals and the priorities of the coalition year after year are agreed to by all members. And what we do is then go out and meet with our legislators and our elected officials and agency folks to talk to them about what our priorities are, to remind them that there is the Catskills. Not that anybody in this room needs to be reminded for that, but there were meetings in the beginning when I would go into an office and start saying I was here for the Catskills, and somebody would say, well, where are the Catskills? And so, we started from a very low point to where we are today. And so it's really exciting to be here today, to be talking about budget priorities in what is a very tough budget year. We already have buy-in from the governor's office in the EPF budget, showing funding for the Catskills and for New York's environment in general. So, we are in a good place for the Catskills, and obviously we're going to continue to work to make the Catskills a better place. But I think we should all appreciate how far we've come in the last almost decade of work here. So for 2021, we have 3 main areas of priorities for the Catskill Park Coalition. The first is really dedicated to public safety and Catskill Park management. Year after year, we have impressed upon the governor's office the need for more staffing at DEC. It's one of the hardest working agencies in the Catskills. It's tasked with managing and overseeing millions of acres of forest preserve land between the Catskills and Adirondacks, and it does so with really a handful of folks. And so, you know, we believe that there needs to be more lands and forest staff to manage the forest preserve, and there also needs to be more forest rangers to help be out on the forest preserve, working with the public, heading off problems, and maintaining public safety. The next main priority for the coalition is the funding of the Environmental Protection Fund. And as I mentioned, the governor's budget proposal does include a fully funded Environmental Protection Fund at $300 million. That includes several priorities that have been identified by the coalition as annual priorities. That includes a funding line for the Catskills Visitor Center, a funding line for the Catskill Science Collaborative, a funding line for Cornell University to develop a biocontrol lab against hemlock woolly adelgid, continued funding for smart growth grants, which directly benefit towns and nonprofits throughout the Catskill Park. It's one of the easiest to get grants in the system, and for our communities that don't have a lot of resources to work with here in the Catskills, it's a great way for them to get money for projects and make it happen. And then there's continued funding for Bel Air Ski Center to continue to modernize and bring that up. That's really an engine of economic opportunity for the Central Catskills, and continued funding for stewardship activities. So everything you see more or less happening on the Forest Preserve in the Catskill Park, whether it's rock steps on a trail or a reconstructed parking area or whatever those things are, these are all stewardship funds. They fund many of the partnership programs that exist, and so they're incredibly important. And then finally, the third major priority for the coalition this year is supporting our local economies here in the Catskills, and also trying to address some of the high use challenges and benefiting, I think, from some of those. So the first one is to really go full force with looking at returning a swimming hole at Kenneth Wilson State Campground. It used to be it used to be a swimming area. There was unfortunately siltation, and that area filled up. There's been talk year after year about returning it to a full-fledged swimming area. We see that many of our visitors now want water-based recreation, and we need more of these improved areas. So the coalition is calling for both the feasibility study and just moving right ahead to work on that. And then there already is an approved plan for a mountain biking trail system on the Forest Preserve adjacent to the Bel Air Ski Center. And we are really looking to move ahead with the implementation of that plan. All the planning work has been done, all the permitting work has been done, the environmental review through the unit management process. So we've got a shovel-ready project that will make a big difference. It will add a third major mountain biking destination to the Catskills. And we've already seen in 2 other locations that mountain biking brings direct economic benefits to our region.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, thank you. So we've got a lot of great priorities and a couple of big challenges identified here. When we're looking to the future, so panelists, where are the Catskills going to be in 2046, 25 years from now? From where you sit, what's your vision for the Catskills, and what are we doing this year that's going to get us to that vision? So we'll go back in the same order again, and we'll start with the commissioner.
Thanks. It's a great question. I mean, I think we have just had our 50th anniversary. So we look back at the last 50 and see what worked and what didn't, and then really, since we are a forward-looking agency, what needs to improve. The Catskills, given its proximity to such a high level of population, we need to do everything we can to ensure that as the climate begins to change, invasive species begin to migrate to the north, that we keep science on the cutting edge. We're guided by science. Ultimately, protecting the ecology of the Catskills is critically important for a variety of reasons. It drives the economy, drives tourism. It's also the source of drinking water for New York City, which is a really important issue. So we have to maintain that ecological footprint, and that is job number one, obviously, for DEC. Number two, and when I look ahead 25 years, assuming we can protect the backcountry, which I know we will, because we have amazing staff, totally dedicated, and we've got great legislators who are totally bought into this. Is the protection of hamlets and the growth of hamlets within the Catskills, because you have to have that mix of vibrant backcountry, but really sustainable communities within the Catskills, and we play a big role in that interface between the wildlands and the developed spaces. So, my view, the Catskills should be as beautiful and accessible as ever as they were 100 years ago once people get into the backcountry, but they should find communities that are revitalized. And I think if we can accomplish that in the next 25 years, that's a huge win. I will note one thing. Assemblymember Tague mentioned this process that we should be having. I want to call attention to the Catskill Advisory Group that we just created this year, which is staffed in part by your organizations, Jeff and Katherine. That is a broad range. We're going to take on a broad range of challenges: overuse, backcountry issues, diversity issues, accessibility. Bring it all into one group. You all are meeting right now. I want to thank you for your time, and whoever else is listening for being a part of that. Really important for us to do this kind of planning. So I think that 25-year question will be taken up, is being taken up already in this group. And if we don't start these kinds of multi-decade solution-oriented endeavors now, we're going to have all kinds of problems down the line. So glad to have launched that this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Senator Hinchey.
Thank you. I agree with everything that the commissioner said. I also think that the Catskill Park will play, it already is, but even more so, really be an economic driver in our region and have stronger ties throughout our businesses as well, right? And making sure that we are really essential focal point of the economy here in our region. I think that's what we're shifting towards. That's what we want to be, and that's where we will be. Making sure that we are supporting our small fish and game. I'll shout out my friend Judd Weisberg in Greene County, who's a fly fisherman with a great business. These are the types of organizations that we need to be encouraging and promoting and growing, because these are the people who are stewards of the land, right? These are people who are making a living because they love to live here and they're doing it right. And so as we continue to grow and move forward and bring more people into the region, whether we're bringing them or they're finding us themselves, making sure that we are promoting and elevating the organizations and the groups who have been doing it right for years, and really having that strong economic tie so that we're sustainable and that we can support the communities and the people who have lived here for generations and for decades can continue to live here. I think we have a really unique opportunity right now in this moment to make sure that we get it right so that we are sustainable for the future. We talk a lot about infrastructure already on this panel, and now is the time to be doing that and to be working in partnership with Catskill Mountainkeeper and with the Catskill Center and so many other organizations to make sure that we are planning these types of infrastructure projects so that we protect, again, the quality of the water and the sanctity of the land, and that we're promoting stronger ties with our local businesses in the hamlets, in our straight to our main streets, so that we really have a strong upstate revitalization effort, strongly driven by the Catskills. So I think that's where we will be. I think that's where we are already heading. We see it all the time through work from organizations like yours and so many people on this call. And as long as we can continue to promote that work in the right way, in the right direction, I think we'll be in a really vibrant space.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Gunther, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with everything they say. And, I just think that as a community and, with our children, we have to continue to be great caretakers of our water and our land. And, planning is very important. And I know that with your help and the help of politicians like myself who really care about water and land and, how development is goes forward. That I think that's very important, with clean water. And, as I go through as I say, I travel a lot through the Catskill Mountains, and I see so many people enjoying, whether it be the streams or climbing the mountains or going through the trails, that we continue taking care of it, of all of these important parts of our habitat. And as I think of it, with my children and everything, I think that if we teach our children, I think that's the most important lesson that we can do, how valuable it is. We don't do a lot of that in schools. I know, like in Fallsburg schools, they do an outdoor science class, and I think teaching our children is really important, and how valuable the trees are, and the water, and how what clean air, what it means to all of us. And, don't throw that wrapper on the floor. But I think that there's a learning curve here. I really do. And, I always think about the children in the Bronx with all the asthma, and getting those children to be able to come up here and really enjoy the fruits of your labor. And, we talk a lot about the Bronx and the asthma. And, I know that, in our community, we're trying to do an exchange kind of thing with, the Bronx, and bringing kids up here is really important. I remember when we were young, we had a house on Greenwood Lake, and we used to bring up the fresh air kids with my dad and my mom. And I mean, we need to continue to do that. We have some great camps, the YMCA in Claryville, but I think that's important to expose other children to the beauty of our area and all the things that we appreciate, and let them enjoy it also. And I think that's important. Sometimes I think we live in our own world, and we need to expand it a bit.
Very cool. Assemblyman?
You're giving me more time, Catherine?
Don't make me regret it, sir. Don't make me regret it.
I won't, I promise. And you would think that after what Assemblyman Gunther said, you would think that her and I collaborated before the meeting. But
there's no farts on the call.
Yeah, you got it. 25 years from now, I want to see the park as a go-to destination and what I would call connecting the dots around the world. I think the Catskills is such a beautiful, unique place that people around the world would like to come here to visit. And, off of what Assemblywoman Gunther said, education, I think, is the most important thing. And, I've been able to go with Jeff a couple times at different parts of the park to see the efforts that are put forth with the arts, with environmental, all different types of education. And I think that is really the most important thing. And I found myself at my age, which I'm not going to mention, when I was there listening to some of the folks that, that educate, how interesting it was. Things that I didn't know. And I was a dairy farmer. I've lived in upstate New York, rural upstate New York, in the same town my whole entire life. I live 45 minutes from Haines Falls, Hunter. Things that I learned. So I think that's where I want to see. I think the biggest thing, though, that we have to do is we have to provide efficiency and safety for all these locations within the Catskill Park. Because I think once people feel safe and they know that they can go to a place and they're going to get, they're going to be able to go to, let's say, for instance, downtown Tannersville or downtown Hunter, and they're going to, if they want lodging, there's a place that they can stay, a place that they can park. All those things go together. Though, to me, the biggest thing is public safety. Making sure that people feel efficient and safe while they're at these places. That's what's going to continue to make them come back. That's my opinion. But that's where I want to see the park 25 years from now. I want it a worldwide destination. And for when people leave there, to brag about what they've seen and how well we have done to take care of it. I think that's the important thing.
Thank you, sir. And Jeff, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to, really, I think everybody has put out things that we all want to see for the Catskill Park. So I want to hit on a few other items. I do think, the Catskills, we are blessed in New York to have 2 forest preserves. These are some of the largest intact, unfragmented ecological areas. These are incredible resources for New Yorkers. They're also incredible resources for our country and for our world as we face climate change. And we are going to see the impacts of climate change here in the Catskills, both to our forests, to our recreational resources and to our communities. We see flooding events that become more frequent and such. So I think, one key thing for a park for 25 years from now is really preparing and being ready for the impacts of climate change, ensuring that ecological integrity of the Catskills is maintained through continued protections, really working on increasing the viability of our communities. One thing I often say is, we don't want the Museum of the Catskills in the future, which is just, some great places to hike and maybe a few very touristy things. That's not a real community. It's not what the Catskills are about. It's not what our forest preserve and our Catskill Park is about. The park is a unique patchwork of both public and private lands, and the continued viability of both the public lands and the private lands in terms of our communities is incredibly important. And I think the other thing that I would love to see in a Catskill Park 25 years from now is really all the different parts of the park, whether it is DEC or other state agencies, whether it's our towns, our counties, and the organizations like the Catskill Center, Catskill Mountainkeeper, and others, really working together with science-based information, good data. We're actively managing the park. To the Assemblyman's point, we already are a world-class destination. Travel and Leisure named us like the #2 place to come after a village in Italy or something like that. And our goal now is to set the foundation so that 25 years from now, we're still on those lists. And we still have all of the resources, and we still have all those little unique places that people want to see, and great communities and amazing wild spaces. So we have to invest now to really save what we have and also continue to build what we have that makes this place so wonderful.
Right.
Don't you think that the DEC, I know that in my area, New York State has taken parcels of land, like 200 acres from a gentleman named Ben Wexler. It's a beautiful area, and he passed away. And at this point, there is nobody patrolling those areas. And if you go down, I live right by the Mongup River, and people come and they view the eagles every day. So there's a lot of areas that, in the old days, we used to have a lot more employees walking around and patrolling the areas. We don't really have that anymore, to protect the environment. I mean, with the one that Ben Wexler owned, it was just amazing. And he kept it pristine, and now people have beer bottles and things like that. And, I go along and pick it up, but I think that, that the fact that we need more people employed by the DEC to be able to,
Yeah.
I mean,
agreed. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
As somebody, like, I pick up my own property. We have 600 acres. So I go along and literally with garbage bags, pick up junk. And as I go along
Right.
the way down by the Mongup, I do the same thing. And I think that, hiring is important also to protect all these places.
I'm starting to feel like this is my budget
so
hearing.
I just want to jump in. Hold on, wait. I want to jump in. Moderator's privilege, because we've got a whole bunch of questions to get to, and I want to make sure that we get to hear from some of the folks who have joined us on the line. And the Assemblywoman, a number of the questions that we have kind of ties into some of what you were just mentioning, which has to do with we're getting more and more visitors to the park, and this is a good thing. This is what we wanted, is more people coming to visit. With that, though, comes more impacts, right? So we've got somebody asking about trash pickup. Like, what are we going to do with the amount of trash that's coming our way? And then also signage. There are folks who are voicing concerns about, basic infrastructure out on the trails, and how can we address that, and how can we get more investment, building on what the Assemblywoman was saying, into these types of solutions, or these types of challenges and their solutions. So
I think
open to the crowd.
Another parking is another big issue along the trails, because the cars are sticking out in the middle of the road because they just don't have enough areas to park.
Right.
And you've been
Right.
slammed with tourism.
Right. So folks on the panel, what are your thoughts on, how do we address some of these challenges?
Well, let me jump in on the staffing front. It's just a 3.5-hour budget hearing. What was it, 2 weeks ago? I might as well continue. That was fun. Thank you to all of you that participated. Listen, I think our staffing levels are important, but it's also really important to focus on communications. I think you will never be able to staff up enough if the people that you're attracting aren't adhering to best principles of visitation and leave no trace. Something we've been pushing a lot in the High Peaks. Something that we've been using very successfully at Blue Hole. But there needs to be a very well coordinated campaign of communications on what to do when you're a visitor. Because I think if we can instill some of those stewardship principles on first-time visitors, they come back, they gain a greater appreciation, sort of making them permanent visitors, or if you will, to the park, or return visitors. Then they're less likely to do those kinds of things that maybe leaving trash behind. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us. This Catskill Advisory Group, I'm hoping, will take that up and provide some solutions on that then we can all get behind as a state, with the other agencies as well. So I think that's something that we should put some time into offline for sure.
One thing I'll add too that doesn't, and I can get to the question in a second, but I was going to add before, and I think it speaks to what we're saying, is we talk so much about how do we make the Catskills better and more sustainable for people to come visit. But to everything that Jeff was saying earlier, it's also for those of us who live here, right? How do we make sure that we can continue to protect the Catskills and the sanctity of our land so that we can continue to live here? So many of us do, because of the outdoor recreation, because of how beautiful it is, because of the access to the streams and the hiking trails and so many of the incredible things that we have here, right? And so while we have, I think, it's at the forefront of all of our minds because we've had such an influx of people coming in this summer, which has just put such a strain on the trails and the natural resources that we have. And so we're all trying to scramble to figure out how we can address that now so that next summer, these people aren't going away anytime soon, right? Which is great for our economy, but we also need to make sure that we are putting in the parameters in place now, because they'll be back, right? But we also really need to keep front and center of this conversation, making sure that we are really looking out for the towns and the communities and the people who are here, who have been using these trails and these swimming holes for decades, who now feel like they can't, right? Because they've been overrun, because in-state tourism has increased so much. So I add that just to say that that's what I'm thinking about a lot too, as someone who grew up here. And I think as we move forward with it, how do we make sure that the people who live here, who have accessed it, will be able to continue to do so too?
Thank you. And just shifting to another set of questions, we've got Assemblyman, go ahead real quick, and then I just
want to believe it or not, briefly touch on what Senator Hinchey just said, because one of the biggest complaints I've had in my office since the COVID crisis were neighbors of Catskill Falls, people parking in their driveways, people leaving garbage on their property, people walking across their property, and that puts a bad taste in the people whose support we need. Getting back to the idea that we've all talked about, transportation and communication, if we had some sort of system set up, this information could be given to people when they enter the park, that this is where they need to put their garbage, This is where they have to park. If you're parked somewhere else, your car is going to be towed, so on and so forth. That would make the residents of those areas much happier. And then they would surely continue to be supportive of the park and happy to be a neighbor.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And then one of the questions, I'm going to actually direct this one over toward Jeff first. We're getting a whole series of questions about diversity in the park and inclusion, and making sure that that visitors and locals alike from all different backgrounds, all different races and ethnicities are feeling welcome and safe in the park. And I know that there are some initiatives underway. Jeff, can you talk a little bit about some of what's happening?
Sure. You know, I think it actually touches a little bit on what has been said, you know, and the increasing use that we're seeing in the park, and also, you know, new people that are coming to the park and you know, coming to communities and becoming part of communities. The Catskills, for better or for worse, have not been a very diverse place in terms of many sets of measurements, but we are working on that. And you know, I think that one effort that we can all make is looking at these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, the people that are coming to visit the Catskills or coming to live here that are not like us, as you can see from this panel, we're a pretty a basic bunch here. And,
we're very white.
Yes, we're very white,
very
and,
white.
and you know, socioeconomic generally, you know, but as has been mentioned, you know, there are people who live in the inner cities of New York that have never been in the woods, and there is no way for them to get from where they are into this beautiful forest preserve and experience it. Or, you know, there are some people that are able to get here, but their experience in the outdoors might be limited to visiting Bear Mountain State Park, where they can have a picnic and they leave their stuff next to the trash can, and magically the next day it goes away. And that's just not how it works in the Catskills. You know, for somebody like me, I grew up with a dad that had me out in the woods constantly. I kind of in my blood know what to do and what not to do, but I'm lucky. And so, you know, working to bring in and make the Catskills more welcoming, making the stakeholders of the Catskills that work here more welcoming, including the Catskill Center. You know, we have the same challenge. You know, I think that we can't educate the people that are coming here, whether they're visitors or new residents, on how to responsibly enjoy the park until we understand how to welcome them and how to knit them into the fabric of this park. So I look forward to those efforts that the Catskill Advisory Group is tackling that, and in several other ways too.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I know this is something that the department has been thinking about as well. Is there anything that you would like to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're working on this specifically in both parks, really Adirondacks and Catskills. You know, how to better include diverse populations, how to make visitors feel welcome as they're traveling into these locations, and when they arrive. We've seen some really unfortunate incidents over the past year, even as this issue has been in the forefront. And nonetheless, some unfortunate incidents that have happened, and I think that's crystallized some of the thinking about what needs to be done. We all need to look inward about how do we diversify our own workforces, but I think, you know, when it comes to the work we can do within the Catskills and Adirondacks, it's important to provide a location for some of the thinkers in these communities to help advise us. The Catskill Advisory Group, that's one of the members of the Catskill Advisory Group, will be providing some of that guidance on how we're making the connections between New York City and some of the great places that we have in the Catskills. Language accessibility, when people arrive in the Catskills, that there are people there who can actually translate and provide guidance in the appropriate languages. That's something we have at Blue Hole, done great work on that. So this is a core issue for us. It always has been, but I think we need to supercharge it now, because as we all find these great places to find refuge, we need to make sure that it's being that opportunity has been given equitably, because this is our 25-year look. What do we want the Catskills to look like in 25 years? It should be more diverse. It should be really accessible to New York City and wherever. And the folks want to put down roots. They should find communities that are welcoming.
Great, thank you. So taking this in another direction here, we've got a number of folks piping up or coming up with some great ideas about, volunteer opportunities and bringing volunteers, be it, that somebody came in with the idea of almost like a ski patrol, having like a forest mountain patrol, a volunteer EMTs. We've got somebody else asking about scouts groups and other volunteer groups. And Commissioner, I know that as part of the State of the State, the governor was rolling out an idea around adopt a trailhead programs potentially here in the Catskills. Is that someplace that some volunteer groups could plug in?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
We need all. We will never get to where we want to get in 25 years without an extreme level of partnership help. That is the bottom line. So the stronger we can make those opportunities, the better.
Great. Thank you. Excuse me. So just a couple of we'll just do a rapid fire round robin and just do real quick. We've talked about a lot of opportunities, and there's been a lot of agreement about some of the solutions here. Somebody asked in the questions, what are some of the hurdles? What are the roadblocks that prevent us from getting where we want to go in the next 25 years? So Assemblyman Tague, kick us off short and sweet.
That's probably the easiest question of the night. The answer's funding.
Go for it.
The answer's funding. And we just keep banging on our good friend, Commissioner Seggos, when he goes and talks to the governor and says those folks from the Catskills are really cool dudes. We should throw some extra money in their way. Honestly, that's the issue. It's the funding, and we need to keep, folks like Senator Hinchey, myself, and Assemblywoman Gunther. We just need to keep the train going loud, and doing all we can to get our fair share for this area. And I just wanted to touch quickly on one other quick thing that the commissioner said when we were talking about diversity. We have to invite people here. That's what we have to do. We have to go to different groups of folks and say, come visit us. Come visit us. And I think by bringing children here and educating them, children go home and tell their parents what a wonderful time and schoolmates that they had in the Catskills. I think that's one of the ways that we get diversity and get other folks to come to our region.
Thank you, sir. Assemblymember Gunther, what do you see as some of the roadblocks to getting where we want to go?
The money is always an issue, but I also think that one of the things we can do, I think that Michelle and I both, it'd be nice to get a bus trip up for the senators and for the assembly people to come on up and visit. And I bet you they'd let us stay at the Claryville YMCA where my kids used to go, but that's really, we have a lot to see. We have Bethel Woods, we have things in Ulster County, and a weekend away. And I think is important. And I think that, I learned something really quick. I'm going to tell you, my daughter is married to a Mallorcan Parisian, and, everybody loves Paris, and they love Mallorca. And my other daughter-in-law comes from Alicante. So all three, they love it up here. I brought their families. I've had, it's like the League of Nations. And you know what? They all want to come back to the Catskills. And they live in Paris, they live in Mallorca. And where do they want to come? They can't wait to get back here. That tells us something. They just think it's the most beautiful place in the world.
Great. Senator Hinchey, what are your thoughts?
That's why we see so many people moving here this year.
I know.
and always, right?
I'll tell you, we got all the we used to call them yuppies, but I guess I don't know what they call them now. But they're 30 and above.
Yeah,
Neighbors.
tons of people moving in. Listen, I mean, for me, I would agree with Assemblyman. I mean, the funding is critical, and I think we have to be really creative in how we can continue to increase the funding for the Catskill Park. We can keep knocking on the commissioner's door, which we will, but we also need to think more broadly about what we can do to make sure some of this money stays here. I mean, it might be a provocative idea that I think many of us have talked about, but there are some funds that are created here that go into the general fund. How do we make that come back to the park, right? So that it's actually paying and sustaining itself. Right? That's something that we should be pushing. How are we raising revenue in the state to make sure that we can actually fund these programs in the way that we need to? We have a lot of things to fund. Protecting our environment is a critical part of that. So we have to be creative in how we're looking at funding these things. And I think a bus trip is a great idea to get our colleagues on board on that. I think people calling their members and neighboring members is a great way to get people on board with that. We have to just continue to elevate how important our region is so that people know and they think about it when they get to this part of the fight for funding. And we should be much more creative on how we're doing that.
All right. Jeff, real quick, what are the roadblocks?
I would agree that funding is key. And I think that expanding the understanding of why New York is successful and that success comes from the Catskills. You always hear New York City is the lifeblood of New York. It's the economic engine. It's what drives New York. Well, what drives New York City is the cool, clean water from the Catskills. And without the Catskills and without our unique natural areas and all of this hard work that we've done, there would not be a successful New York City. I also think another roadblock really quick is there is a lot to do, and there is just by all of us here in this group, there are a lot of people that have to work together, and working together is hard. And when you have groups that represent different things, we've been lucky that we can generally work together here in the Catskills, but we need to learn how to do a better job of partnering, of getting those volunteers out, of having groups working, hand in hand to move this park forward, because there is a whole lot of work to do. And there's everything from the glorious new thing to maintenance, and we all have to work together and kind of keep tabs on everything to make sure that it's moving forward.
10-year plan? Do you have a plan for like 10 years as far as financially and that to look out 10 years from now? Like, in other words, like, sometimes you can't, a house wasn't built in a day. So, I mean, do you have a 10-year plan, a short-term plan, and a long-term plan for the Catskills?
I think that is one thing that the Center and Mountainkeeper is looking to work on with the department, that we hope that the Catskill Advisory Group, we recently crafted a comprehensive recreation plan for the Catskill region that kind of maps out what the future of the Catskills can look like. I think that we have these documents. Part of I guess the other roadblock is the Catskills are the land of forgotten plans. We have a library. We have a library of plans to make the Catskills.
I mean, it doesn't have to be something that's enormous, but you have to have a 10-year plan.
Right.
And we do. We absolutely do. Yes. And I think a lot of the different pieces we've identified here are what's kind of holding us back from moving forward. Like we'd like to. Commissioner, your last thoughts on what are the roadblocks we're up against?
Yeah. Well, listen. I think funding is a roadblock. Right. We now are at the point where the governor, over 10 years, we put more money into the environment really than any other period in the state's history. $5 billion Clean Water Infrastructure Act didn't exist. $300 million EPF never existed. The Superfund law, $1 billion total to over 10 years. I mean, we are at a bit of a renaissance with funding programs, but I think the great unknown and the thing what we now have an opportunity to do is secure federal funding. We talk about this as a historic international resource. It is. The Catskills is not only a destination, again, back to that water supply issue. If we're going to safeguard 9 million people's water, the Catskills, the protection of Catskills is vitally important. So I think the share of federal dollars going into these places needs to be increased. We're also in a tremendous budget hole, $15 billion budget hole. I said this in my budget hearing last week. If we don't get federal relief on that massive budget hole, we're in a deeper hole. So right now we need sustained federal pressure on our federal partners to provide the funding for state and local governments that are so badly needed. That is the biggest problem right now. If we don't get that, that's a multi-year blow to all of our ambitions on this call. So that's one. I think two is keeping our eye on the prize. My view is we are going to be beset and buffeted by an increasing number of problems when it comes to the environment over the next 10, 25 years, right? We talk about flooding. Senator Hinchey and Assemblymember Tague and Assemblymember Katherine know about the environmental problems we've gone through between Hurricanes Irene and Lee and even Sandy. How do you keep up with this long-term planning and yet be responsive to the crises that we see happening? I mean, that is I think where these short-term groups that we create, we have to make them more long-term in nature. I think the Catskills has a great chance because you all have been really successful over 10 years. And I think we just look ahead to the next generation on that.
Well, thank you so much. That's what a fantastic way to close us out this evening. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the more than 200 people who signed on this evening I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. Thank you so much. You'll get a follow-up email. We've got a lot of folks interested in knowing how they can learn more and stay involved, and never fear, I'll be in touch about that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening and be in touch. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye, all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Great to see
you.
you.